Welcome to NWA Connie Corso's podcast, where we talk all things dogs.
Hello, everyone. We're back. We're back for another show with a stranger. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Glad to see everybody tune back in for some more knowledge and things like that. I am your host, Joe of NWA Connie Corso. I breed Corsos and Central Asian Shepherds here in Arkansas. My guest, our regular guest, Mr. Kenny Triano. Kenny, let's treat it like this the first time and let the people know who you are.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm Kenny Triano. I'm the founder of the Breeders Academy, which is a website that teaches people how to breed. We have a breeding method called the Founders Program. And where do you want me to go? I mean, I've been teaching breeding for like over 20 years, 25 years. I started out writing for the magazines like the Gamecock, the Poultry Press, the Grit and Still, Feathered Warrior magazines in Mexico and Australia and the Philippines. And then like I said, I created the Founders Program, built the website, and that's what we've been doing ever since. We have a show called Bred to Perfection, which I host, and my co-host is my wife, Nancy, and Frank Bradley. And then we also have a podcast called Bred to Perfection as well. And you can find that on any platform that you listen to podcasts. I think that's it. Yeah.
Cool. All right, everybody. We're going to do it like usual. We're going to jump right into things. Kenny, today we're going to talk about the necessary requirements for creating a family animals, family of dogs, family. This dog specifically we're going to try to stay on. But this the art of breeding goes across all animals. Am I right or wrong, sir?
Oh yeah, breeding is breeding. You know, the methods are the same. The species may be different, and what we select for as far as traits may be different, but the actual breeding process is the same. We do alter it just a tad when it comes to mammals versus chickens, but for the most part, it's the same thing. Yeah.
All right. What's the first thing we need to focus on?
Well, I just want to say this. We are going to change hopefully the way you think of things. I've been doing a lot of studying. We have a lot of members that are dog breeders. I've been talking with them, doing a lot of studying on I want to call it the hobby itself, you know, as far as what dog breeders are concerned, checking a lot of videos, checking out whatever I can to kind of get an idea of where you guys are. And I'm finding that it's very close to what we were dealing with chickens. When I started with chickens, we hung on to old wives' tales, superstitions, and I'm finding that you guys kind of do the same thing. And so when I started presenting the science of it all, it did shake some people up. Some people had a problem accepting it. Finally, some people started to get on board, and little by little, we're changing the trend with the chickens. And I think it's going to be the same way with the dogs in that it's going to shake some people up. It's going to wake some people up. It's going to make some people understand maybe a little better, maybe change the way they do things. And there's going to be some people who are going to fight it and want to do it the way they've always done. So I just wanted to let you guys know that what we're going to teach is basically, it's based on science, but it's going to change the way you think about things completely. And one of the things that, Joe came up to me, and I've done a few shows with him already, but he came up with this idea of doing a series. And the first one we were going to do was breeding methods, which would, for you guys, it's inbreeding, line breeding, and outcrossing. Those are the main ones. So I was kind of determining what I was going to say to you guys and how I was going to teach it and how I was going to present it. But I started looking at a lot of the myths, the old wives' tales, the misconceptions, and then some of the necessary things that you guys need to know. And I figured we better address those first before we go into the actual breeding programs and methods. And I know if Joe also wants to tackle genetics, which would be, I can't wait for that one too. So this is what we're deciding to tackle. And so I'm just going to make our way through it. It's a huge outline. I was telling Joe that I don't think we're going to get through the whole thing. but I don't have a problem answering any questions. I just like the questions to be relative to what we're already talking about, because it is such a huge outline. And like I said, I don't know if we're going to get through it. I don't know if Joe's going to want to do a part 2, but I want to cover it properly.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at right now.
That's one thing you told me. You said, man, we need to start from scratch, basically. And so everybody can understand. Let me give a few shout outs before we get started. Miss Nancy Triano, hey there, young lady. Frza, American Bulldogs. Vicente Moore, that's Rock Connie Corso. They coming up. Buck City, man. Thank you for your support, everything you've been doing to help us, man. Isley Brown, of course, Doug's in the house. Kenny, I'm ready, brother.
Okay. So some of it's going to be obvious, some of it's going to be new to you guys, and some of it you've maybe heard differently that I'm maybe going to change the way you think. So as we know, we got about 400 different dog breeds that we're dealing with. And I think it's important as a breeder, you really need to get to know the dogs that you're breeding. Okay. Need to understand the characteristics of the breed, the makeup of the breed, what to select for, what to cull for. Okay. So once you understand that, then you can move forward, because there's a lot of people just jumping into this. They like the dog, but they didn't really research it or check out the history or the makeup of the breed. And they think just by putting 2 dogs together, they're going to get what they're looking for. And the genetics, are going to find that the genetics are usually working against them. So the better they get to understand the breed, what makes up the breed, maybe hopefully get a mentor that understands the breed as well, that can kind of guide them along the way, they'd be in good shape. Okay. So understand that whenever you do a mating, and this is for those who are thinking about becoming a breeder. Okay. And I talk about my chicken people the same way. Whenever you're putting 2 animals together, the idea is to achieve a particular purpose. Okay. You never just want to put animals together to see what you get. You want to kind of have an idea of what you're already going to get. So if you understand the animals you're breeding, you understand your animals, and you understand hopefully genetics, then what you see, the phenotype of the animal, is going to tell you a lot about what you're going to get. So once you understand the genetics, you're looking at the phenotype of the animal, you're making sure you breed it to a mate that's sharing the same characteristics as the same breed. 99% of the time, you're going to already know what you're going to get. That's the phenotype side. Okay, the genotype is going to be what's hidden underneath, which is going to be those hidden recessives, those hidden detrimental genes, deleterious genes. They're going to pop up now and then. And it's up to you to determine whether you're going to breed to them or cull them out. Right. Okay. So whenever you breed animals, I need to follow the outlines. I want to stay on track. So anytime you're breeding animals, you need to think about what's the form, what's the function, what's the beauty, and the purpose of the animal. And you're always trying to improve those. And if your goal isn't to improve them, then you shouldn't be putting those animals together. So if you're talking about 2 animals or 2 dogs that are having contrasting characteristics, or characteristics are quite different from each other, you're going to see a lot of variation within your offspring, and your results are going to be way off. Okay.
Kenny, and when you say that, you mean you breeding for form, function, and beauty, correct?
I look at whenever I'm breeding, I'm looking to achieve the complete package. Okay. Now, a lot of people go, well, it's hard to achieve the complete package. That's a real tall task to expect. Yeah. Whenever you put 2 animals together, especially when they're not related, you're going to get variation. You're going to see a lot of differences between the offspring. Okay. So that means that the animals, the dogs in your case, that you're going to move forward with are going to be fewer. Okay. Well, that's a good thing. That's what you want, because out of what do you call a group of puppies?
A litter.
A litter. That's right. Okay. So when you look at a litter, it's your job to look for the standouts. It's the standouts that you're going to move forward with. Now, any defects or any serious issues, genetic, anything genetic that seems to be an issue, like a defect, or my mind's kind of going blank. Obviously, you're going to cull those. Okay. Select the standouts that you're going to move forward with, and then you can sell the rest. Okay. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I just want you to make that point, because a lot of people in the dog breeding world go function first, and I'm not worried about that other stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Okay. So let me go back a little bit. It's the complete package that I do look for. So they do have to have the right type conformation. Colors usually last, but still important. Okay. So I am looking for the complete. I want all the traits to be what they should be. Yeah, but that's the main thing is I'm not expecting all the puppies in the litter to be perfect. That happens later. Once you build the foundation, you're going to see more uniformity, more consistency. When you're just starting and you're starting with two, like a dog, a female dog and a male dog, they're not related, you're going to see variation. You're probably going to see some defects that you probably didn't know were there. So that's just beginning. That's not a time to get discouraged, not a time to get frustrated. It's just knowing that, hey, did you get a couple dogs that you can move forward with? A male and a female that have what it takes to move forward with, and that's all you need to move forward with. That's good. You did good. Okay.
Gotcha.
So, experience. Another thing I want to talk about is experience is important, but knowledge of breeding is required. I don't think you can get into breeding if you don't really understand the breeding process. If you don't understand the genetics, if you don't understand when you're looking at the phenotype of the dog, what you're actually looking at. Okay. So what I'd like to say is that not every breeder or not everyone should breed dogs, and not every dog should be bred. Because there's a lot of people that think that every puppy that is produced should be breedable. Okay. It's not that way. Not in the beginning, especially. The idea is to get, a standout that you can move forward with. Like I said, cull the defective ones, the ones with problems, and then sell the rest as pets if you have to, or to other people, because they may be good enough for other people to get started with, but you need to set your standards really high. So you need time with the animals. You need knowledge of breeding. Now, I'm going to name off a few things, which it's going to shake some people up, but we teach this all in the Breeders' Academy. It's not as big as you think it is, but just having an understanding in these areas helps out a lot. So understand the breeding process, understanding genetics, because if you don't understand genetics, you're not going to understand what to select. There's certain mechanisms of evolution and evolutionary biology will really help you understand the breeding process and how it works. It'll help you decide what animals to breed, what direction to go, how to do it. It really woke me up when I started to understand evolution, evolutionary biology, and the mechanisms of evolution. It really changed everything for me. Okay. And then just the process of selective breeding and understanding what birds, what dogs to select and what dogs to cull. Okay. So having practical experience goes a long way, but having the knowledge of breeding is even more important to me. Okay. Because it'll take time to get to know the animals, take time to understand how to care and raise the animals, but having the knowledge to do that and to breeding is a bigger deal to me, because it's gonna cost you a lot of money, time, effort to do it wrong, and you want to try to get off on the right foot as soon as possible. Okay. Mouth is a little dry. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Husbandry practices, kennel management. Okay. What you should know. I think this is where a lot of people are unprepared to be a breeder because they're not properly set up. I mean, we deal with the same thing with chickens. Okay. We get the animals, we set up a couple pens, makeshift pens, and we think that's good enough to get started. Well, getting properly set up is a big deal because you never have enough pens. Let's put it that way. You always need more pens no matter what. Even when you think you've built
it ain't enough.
Built enough pens, you're still not there. Right. You always need more. Okay. And you're going to find out how prepared you are. And then when you get to the point when you have all the pens that your property can handle, then you decide, okay, how big should my family be and how much of it can I manage and how big should it get? I want to keep control of that. So getting set up is a big deal. Feeding, nutrition, understand the proper feeds. There's a lot of feeds out there that are not good. They can cause more damage than anything else. So understanding what to feed them, how to provide the right supplements, the right feed, and that kind of thing. What's going to keep them healthy. This is where a mentor comes into play. And then you got the healthcare and disease prevention. And for you guys, I know that's a big deal in that you got to vaccinate your animals at the right time. And then there's certain medications you guys need to deal with, and then dealing with the veterinarian also. So getting a good understanding of what it takes to keep them healthy. I suggest that you do your best to try to find healthy animals in the first place so that you're not having to deal with the medications. Now, I know for us chickens people, it's really hard to find decent birds. There's a lot of peddlers out there. There's a lot of people that present themselves as great breeders, but they use medications on a regular basis. And so you're forced to get birds that are dealing with a lot of health issues, having to give them a lot of medications. And so you may have to do that to get them to a state of health through selection. But you may have to give them the medications at first until you can get them to that point, and then you can back off on the medications. Now, your guys' deal may be a little bit different. I do believe that if you selectively breed, you create a really good family, and you do things properly, I think you're going to have to, you won't have to use as much medications. Now, I'm sure the vaccinations are a big deal for you guys because you're taking your animals off your property a lot. You're taking them, you're putting them with other animals all the time. So that's a big deal. You're not going to be able to just lock them up on your property and then hide them from everything. So I know that there's no way to get around that. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So, any questions yet? I just want to make sure we're
No, I'm following right along.
Okay. Okay. The other thing is it takes some commitment. Okay. And my suggestion is, and I tell the chicken people the same thing, is to commit to one family. You'll run out of space really quick when you try to raise 2 or more breeds, because you're still talking about the cost of raising them, the time that you have to put into it, all the effort to breed them and raise them and keep them healthy. And then the knowledge, because like I was telling you a little while ago that, you have to understand the breed that you're breeding. Well, now if you have 3 breeds, you have to understand all 3 of them, and their genetics, as far as the traits that you're selecting, are quite different. You know what I mean? And so that makes it harder, makes it more difficult, more challenging.
That's a lot.
So go ahead.
That's a lot. That's a lot to deal with when you got more than 2 or 3 breeds, and really, that's be straight up a bad sign. You probably just what we call a puppy mill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we had the same thing in chickens. I always tell them that I did it myself. I had like 15 different breeds, and I just wasn't making the progress. I was maybe getting a clutch or 2 out of each breed. I just wasn't getting good enough birds. But when I started getting rid of everything, I got down to the best one. I had all these pens that I could use. I was able to produce more offspring. I had a better selection, and they exponentially got better, faster, quicker. Okay. Where I wasn't making any progress before. And I think the dogs are the same way. If you can stick to one breed of dog, put all your attention into that, become an expert in that breed, understand the breeding process with that breed, what to select for, you're gonna do better in the long run.
Right.
I think you're gonna be better off. Okay. So here's the other one: is making sure you have the courage to do what's necessary. Now, for chickens, I think it's easier because we can eat our culls. I think a lot from what I'm seeing and some of the people I've talked to, it feels like a lot of the breeders, a lot of the dog breeders, they work out of fear and anxiety. Okay. So they fear inbreeding, and I've never seen it at the level that I'm seeing it with you guys. Is that inbreeding inbreeding, the way I think of it, is like big taboo. It's like when I tell them what I think they need to do, they're like, oh, we can't do that. That's like the worst thing ever. That causes all kinds of problems. And I'm like, well, if you're going to be a breeder and you're actually trying to create a line or a strain, and I'm going to not use the word line, and I'll tell you, I don't know if I could tell you why. I think Joe knows why I can't actually use the word line. But I'm going to say strain.
Strain, yeah.
There's a reason why I won't use line right now.
Yeah.
I don't think it applies to you guys the way you guys think. Okay. So you guys fear inbreeding. and you fear culling. And I think culling is unavoidable. So if you're going to be a proper breeder and you're going to breed in the way you need to, especially in the beginning, you guys are going to get a lot of culls, and you're going to have to figure out what to do about that. I don't think, and again, like I said, not everybody should be a breeder in the first place. So because this is a big deal. If you can't deal with the fact that there's going to be culls, then maybe you shouldn't be a breeder. That's the only thing I can really say.
Yeah.
Okay. So another thing they fear is the genetics and the science. And I don't think you can be a breeder without understanding those really well. Because we see this in the chicken world. They put two chickens together and let's see what we get. The experimental game. Okay. 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 out of 100, they don't get what they think they're going to get because the genetics are working against them. They're behind the genetics a lot of times. They're putting two birds together thinking they're going to get one trait or one phenotype, and they end up getting another because they didn't understand the genetics. So if you understand the genetics, then you can put the two dogs together and have a pretty good understanding what you're already going to get. And then all you have to do is deal with the genotype, which is the hidden traits that are going to show up from time to time. And then all you need to do is decide whether you're going to breed to them, exaggerate them, or you're going to cull them, because you are going to get that. And that's why I say culling is inevitable. You're going to have to do some culling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and Kenny, the inbreeding thing that is like very taboo to a lot of people in the dog world, and the ones who, then there's a lot of people that's just hadn't even done it, but they had been told, oh, you better not do it, so it's kind of like that too,
And I'm seeing that because I was watching some videos and they're like, I would never suggest that you do inbreeding. Never suggest you do that. And I'm thinking, I'll bet you anything they've never done it. They just know that it's not a good idea.
Right.
Now I will say this, and we're going to talk about inbreeding in another episode, so I don't want to get too heavy into it. But when I say that you need to do some inbreeding, I'm not talking about every generation.
Right.
Okay. Even Robert Bakewell, who we call the father of selective breeding, back in the 1700s. Okay. I mean, he found out real quickly that without inbreeding, you can't create a strain. Without the inbreeding, you can't lock in the genes. Without the inbreeding, you can't get uniformity and consistency. Understand this, that every breed that we have today is a result of inbreeding, not outcrossing, not breeding outside stuff into yours. It's through the actual process of inbreeding. And I don't want to talk too much about that because we're going to get into it, but inbreeding has to happen for your strain to be uniform, consistent. And the idea of outcrossing, the way you guys do it just makes me shiver. You know what I mean? I actually can't wait to get into that because I think it's, I think we're going to, Joe and me in the back end before we got started, we got into talking about that. And I think I'm going to wake you guys up just a little bit on what outcrossing actually does, what it causes, what you guys are dealing with. And there's other ways to avoid that. We can inbreed, like the Founders Program. We can do a lot of inbreeding, or we can inbreed quite a bit and still avoid the issues with the COI, the coefficient of inbreeding. We have a mechanism within the Founders Program that fixes all that. So I don't think you guys need to fear inbreeding the way you guys are at this point, So, but the great breeders I know and not just chickens and livestock, poultry, even dogs, are the ones that are willing to push their strain to the limit, to see how far they can push them, and then you start there. Okay, so because you need to know how far you can push them, so you'll know when to stop and lock in the genes and fixate those genes. I think to become a breeder, you actually need to leave your heart out of the decision. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do for most people. I understand why they're afraid of inbreeding. I understand why they don't want to have to cull or produce culls, but to be a breeder, you're going to have to make some hard decisions, and that is in the process of breeding and what to do with the results after you do it.
Exactly. I had Dr. Joe Spoo on, and I asked him if there's anything you want to say to breeders. He said, you got to tighten up, guys. You got to be, you got to cull harder. This was a breeder, a vet, I mean, that said the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
and the next thing would be patience and perseverance. Okay. You're going to have to accept the fact that improvements, especially if you're doing things the way you should be, are going to be very slow and subtle. If you're getting if you're seeing improvements really fast, it's most likely because you've brought two animals together, two dogs together that aren't related. You're getting hybrid vigor, and so you're seeing results. You're seeing huge differences. You're seeing offspring that are bigger, better, and faster smarter than their parents. Well, that's what hybrid vigor does. Okay. But the problem with hybrid vigor is it's not inheritable. It's not passed to the next generation. That's why I have such a problem with outcrossing, because when you're outcrossing, you see a huge bump in the offspring. Well, that's just hybrid vigor, but hybrid vigor has the only benefits of hybrid vigor is in the animals you produce. That animal that is producing those great superior traits can't pass those superior traits to its offspring. So
one and done.
One and done. One and done. So the results are seen from an outcross being hybrid vigor is it's a delusion. It's not what they think it is. Okay. So to go through all that trouble of breeding them, inbreeding, locking in those genes to a point when they're actually thinking that, okay, now I'm getting them too inbred. I need to bring in outside blood. I need to outcross to someone else's line to improve on them, to refresh them, to make them better. That was a kiss of death right there. They just didn't realize it, because now they're we're talking about outcrossing. Okay, so let me move on. I don't want
go.
This is so easy to fall into
I know.
those topics, because but we're going to talk into them in depth in another episode.
That's right. Yeah.
So just understand that whenever you're seeing fast and quick results, they're only temporary, and there's a reason for it. Okay.
Right.
Improvement with a good family, improvement's it's going to be slow. It's going to be subtle. It's going to take some time. That's why I tell people, do your best to find good animals. I'm not big into the pedigree itself. The more I look into it, my understanding is it can be falsified. Things can be put in there that shouldn't be in there or is not right. So I don't know if the pedigree to me would be a good standard. I would look at the breeder, get to know the breeder, get a feel for his knowledge and expertise, how he does things, how he breeds them, how he takes care of them. Okay. And look at the animals and see what the results are. If he's breeding and producing really good animals and they meet the standard, they look like they should, they have the right phenotype, they're healthy. Okay. There's no serious defects or issues. Then that's probably a good animal to get started with. Do you have to buy a male and female that are related from the same breeder? Not in the beginning. Not in the beginning. You can find a male from one breeder and a female from another breeder, make sure that they're the right breed, variety, and that they share the same characteristics. Then you can move forward, because the better animals you start with, the better you are going to be getting started. Okay. And that's going to save you a lot of time, money, and effort. And it means that, like in the Founders Program for the Breeders' Academy, we have what we call a cleanup process. The first few stages of the program is what we call a cleanup process. So because for us chickens, most of the time we are buying a male from one breeder and a female from the other, and there's issues hiding underneath them. And when we start running them through the process, we start seeing a lot of genetic diversity. We start seeing defects. We start seeing other things popping up. So we have a cleanup process that deals with that, because you never want to go into the foundation stage with all those faults. Now, we'll say this, and we'll talk about it again later. When you look at like line breeding, now my line breeding is going to be different than what you guys are used to, because what we call line breeding is not only different, but what you guys call line breeding is what we call in and inbreeding. You guys are breeding uncle to niece, aunt to uncle, cousin to cousin. You might even go as close as half brother and half sister. To us, that's not line breeding. in any dead man book, whether it's chickens, animal breeding, or whatever, they say the same thing. Okay, that's what we go by. Inbreeding to us is quite different than what you guys are actually practicing and what your own books tell you. Okay.
Right.
So I will say this, you never want to go into the foundation stage with birds, with dogs that need a lot of work, that need a lot of cleanup. Okay. A lot of people are getting dogs are going right into the line breeding process. They don't realize all the stuff that needs to happen before they start line breeding, and they don't realize what needs to be done after they line breed. They think line breeding is the beginning, the middle, and the end of a program. Line breeding is only one part of it. Okay.
Right.
So
we also got I don't know if you researched enough about dogs. We got this one. It's called 3 in, 1 out.
oh yeah, I've heard that one.
Oh, you heard of it? Yeah.
Yeah, I
No
don't
rhyme or reason.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I've had a
No.
couple people, I think Frank showed it to me, and I looked at it, I go, this doesn't even make sense.
This is one of the silliest things that
well, the other one you guys use a lot too is what's it called? My mind went blank. 5/8, 3/8.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's closer to what you guys are. Most of you guys are using something very close to that, you know, because you're doing something that looks like a proper line breeding. Then you, at a certain point, you bring in outside blood, or you bring in something like you bring in an aunt or an uncle. Okay. Which to me, you're destroying everything you were doing. And it takes a lot of years to get there. So anytime you're adding new blood, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place again. Anytime you're adding new blood, you're recombinating the genes. You're changing the family forever. Okay. You've shuffled those genes. You recombinate them. Now we're talking about a different animal altogether. They're not what they were. Okay. And that's why I don't like the name game, is because they think that by breeding two animals together with different names, that they're preserving those two names. They got 50% of this one and 50% of that. Well, genetics doesn't work like that. You know, if we look at meiosis and the crossover event and how that works, it reshuffles the genes and creates brand new, unique gametes. Those offspring are completely different from each other. In some ways, if you did a good job of matching your male and female together, they're going to look a lot alike, but there's going to be a lot of things about them that aren't. And especially when we're talking about the genome, there's a lot of things within the genome that are going to be quite different. And you're not going to know what that is until maybe 3 or 4 generations down the road. And it's why I think people freak out and think they have to do the outcross, because they start seeing the issues, you know, 3 or 4 generations down the road. And they think that was the problem of breeding them too close. Well, no, they just started to breed them, get them as close as they needed to get the results they should have got. So when they do the outcross, they're starting completely over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, now I just want to pause this in there. Whenever I know we're going to talk about this further, but the outcross pretty much like balling up your homework. Look, all that work you did here, you don't put this new blood in, it's time to start over.
Well, maybe. Like, let's say you do all your homework. Okay. You got them all stacked up in order. All the pages are in the order they should be, ready to present to your teacher. Your little sister comes in and throws them all over the place, and they scatter. And all you did was run around, pick them up real quick, put them in a new pile, and hand them to your teacher.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That to me that's a good analogy to what you just said.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I can't wait to get to that part. You can tell I so badly want to jump right into it, but I want to do it right.
Right.
Because I think when people look at the way we're going to teach inbreeding and line breeding and what the truth is about outcrossing, they may start hopefully thinking about doing things different, you know? Yeah. So I think that's why people use outcrossing, because it looks like instant success, instant gratification. They're not patient. And to them, that's the way they get that. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's that?
Well, I was gonna say too, it is a kind of a lazy way to breed.
Yeah.
If you actually look into these guys' program, a lot of them just crossing just to satisfy a puppy market. They're like, man, it don't matter. The customer don't know. It's not something they trying to build their dogs. It's satisfying the market. So,
and to me, those aren't real breeders.
The peddlers.
to us, they're peddlers. You call them backyard breeders.
Yeah, puppy pushers and
But okay,
yeah.
But those aren't breeders to me. You know, maybe they feel a purpose. Maybe they're getting dogs to people that wouldn't normally get the dogs, but they may be charging higher prices. Who knows? But so I can't down them completely because I don't really know the animals that they're producing and whether they're actually hurting the breed or helping the breed. Not really sure.
Yeah.
But for me, the way the Founders Program is set up is, to me, it doesn't matter. Okay. So if someone buys a bunch of dogs, they're all the same breed, and they're just scatter breed within the bloodline itself, they're scatter breed and they're just producing a lot of animals. Are those animals good enough to get into someone's hand that could start breeding them and maybe run them through a proper program, and a little at a time, their family gets better and better to the point when they're superior animals? Yeah, I actually think that's true. But when we're talking about patience, and I think that's the problem, is everybody wants to see huge results, huge changes from generation to generation. And you might see that in the beginning. Like I said, if you're buying a dog from one breeder and another dog from another breeder and you're breeding them together, you are going to see those changes. They're going to be huge and they're going to be substantial. And that's what the cleanup process is for. Once you get in the foundation stage, any improvement from that point on is going to be very subtle, very slow. You're going to have to know your family fairly well at that point so you can pick out those standouts, because sometimes they can be hard to see. So you want to be very judgmental. You want to be very selective. You want to look them over. You want to know your family so that you are picking those standouts so that you're not getting rid. I've seen so many people get rid of their animals too early, and they actually got rid of the good ones. They didn't realize it, because it's the standouts that are actually going to improve your strain over time. And that's the key. And that's what I tell my breeders. As long as the offspring are better than the parents, even a little bit, you're moving in the right direction. And that's all you should care about.
Small steps.
Yeah. Small steps. As long as they're a little bit better, you're doing good. They don't need to be a lot better. Yeah, they might have areas where they need a lot of improvement. Could I bring in another animal to fix that? Yes and no. Because whenever I'm adding outside blood, especially when we're talking about conformation, we're talking about polygenic traits. Polygenic traits are never improved by one crossing or one infusion. Okay, because the result you're seeing isn't the actual trait of the dog. It's actually hybrid vigor, it's not inheritable, and it's not going to be passed to the next generation anyways. So sometimes,
let me stop you. What is a polygenic trait?
Polygenic trait is let me break it down. You have monogenic traits, which is one gene, one trait. That's like dominant recessive. Okay. Polygenic traits, poly meaning many, is multiple genes. So whatever trait we're looking at, it's created by more than two genes. It could be thousands of genes. It could be hundreds of genes. It could be just two genes. Okay. But like performance ability, just for a lot of people, performance ability means something different for everybody, but it covers a wide spectrum of traits. Polygenic traits are performance traits are polygenic traits. We look at polygenic traits as form and function traits. So anytime you see something that's a part of function of the dog, the purpose of the dog, those are polygenic traits. Anytime you're dealing with form, except for what's a defect where the feet are sticking outwards? What they call it again?
Easty-westy.
Yeah. Okay. That actually is a recessive trait. But the overall conformation of the dog is a polygenic trait. Now, polygenic traits are interesting because the way we can see whether we're dealing with the polygenic traits, we look at the whole line of animals. For like me, my chickens, if I were to let all my chickens out in the yard, look them over, as close as they are, as good as they are, I'm going to see little variations within that particular trait. So anytime I see variation across the board when it comes to a family, I know I'm dealing with a polygenic trait, because we're dealing with variations. We're dealing with gray matter. We don't see that in monogenic traits. We only see that with polygenic traits. Now, the interesting thing about polygenic traits is that they can't be improved by one cross or one infusion. They actually take many generations to fix. And it's by selecting to the highest intensity for that trait over many generations that we are able to fix them. So if I'm having an issue at, let's say, conformation of body, and I know my dogs need to be improved in that area, I have a choice that I can either select the dogs that show that trait the best. They have the highest intensity of that trait, and over time I can improve it by getting offspring that are better and better each generation, and little by little I'll get there. Or I can bring in new blood and completely start over and hope for the best, because that's what you're dealing with.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So,
hey, hold on 1 second. Let me slide this one in here. Hey, Exotic Borbles, what's going on, Jordan? Why does it take many generations to improve polygenic traits?
Polygenic traits, it's not about, it's like, it doesn't, it's all about intensities. It's because of the variation that it produces across the board throughout your family. Okay. So, polygenic traits are interesting in that it does take many generations to improve, but bred to the wrong animal, you can lose it overnight. Performance ability being a big part of that. Okay. So, how do I answer that? My mind just went blank.
But you said performance you can lose overnight if you're not careful.
Yeah, if you breed to the wrong dog. So if whatever the performance ability that I'm worried about, if I oh shoot, I'm trying to think. My mind just went blank. It's getting hot in here, actually, is what's happening.
Back to it.
Yeah, no, it's just getting really hot in here. I'm starting to sweat.
Okay. Miss Nancy, turn the air on.
Yeah, the fan's on. Yeah. What was the question again?
Why does it take many generations to improve polygenic traits?
Because of the variation, the gray matter. Because there's so many. When I breed an animal with polygenic traits, I look at the offspring. I'm going to see variation within the offspring. Okay. Now, they aren't always what I expect them to be, and all I can do is to select the individuals that stand out that have the best in that particular area. So all I'm doing is selecting to the highest intensity, and over time I will get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, here's another thing too about polygenic traits is polygenic traits is also what we call quantitative inheritance. Again, because it's measurable, and anything we can measure, we can fix. Again, over time.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Gotcha.
Polygenic traits are more complicated. Like I said, it takes more. All it takes is one gene for them to lose it. But as long as they have all the genes they need, and they're at it's the intensity we worry about, then we can improve it over time. Okay. So, but it's like monogenic traits like dominant recessive. All we can do is either breed to it or cull it. We don't really have a choice. They either have it or they don't. But polygenic traits, although they are complicated, they're kind of cool too. Because when I'm dealing with a trait that's polygenic, I know that I can improve it over time. That's a good thing. So if I think it's just not going to be fixed overnight, it's just not.
Right. Okay. The numbers. Is it where we are?
Oh, let's see. Well, the importance of selection and culling. We covered a little bit about it.
Okay.
Confirmation. A lot of people want to put performance before confirmation. I think type and confirmation is number one. Actually, I think health and vigor is number one. Because if you don't have healthy, vigorous animals, you're not going to move forward. But type and confirmation is number one. Like we were saying earlier, form. A lot of people say form follows function. Well, I actually think form and function equals purpose. Okay, so but you need to select for both. Both good. They have to have good form, good function. Again, I like the complete package. This means that I'm going to have fewer animals to breed to, but to me, that's a good thing. Okay, it's about selecting the standouts that I'm going to move forward with.
Gotcha.
Just understand that the only thing I want to say about this and to move forward is when we're looking at selection and culling, I think of culling of function that maintains the strain, where selection improves the strain. Okay, so we cull first and then we do our selection.
Right. Kenny, let me go back on something. Miss Nancy is asking, name some polygenic traits.
Performance ability. Trying to think of dogs. Chickens are easy. Performance ability, conformation, type or polygenic, behaviors.
Let me go ahead and ask you about gameness.
Gameness is a polygenic trait.
Is it?
Now,
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I hear it all the time. People really mess up that one because it's the same thing as performance. Is that when you look at performance or gameness, it's not a simple recessive and it's not a dominant, it's a polygenic trait. So whenever you're dealing with performance or gameness, you want to breed to the highest intensity. Because if you look at your animals throughout your yard, they're all going to have different levels or different intensities for performance and gameness. Some are going to be better, some are going to be lower, some are not going to have it at all. And so it's your job is to breed to the ones with the highest intensity, and little over time it'll improve. So yeah, when any trait that you're breeding for that you want to improve, especially when it's polygenic, you got to test for that trait. You just do. Because if you don't know what you're dealing with and you're breeding, you're speculating, you can lose it. That's when you can lose it the most, is when you're not careful about the animals you are breeding. Because you might have the highest intensity in one animal, you breed it to another one that either is not as high as intensity, well, it lowers the intensity within the offspring, or that other animal that you're breeding to has no intense, it's the lowest intensity that you have throughout your yard, and you'll completely lose that trait. So yeah, it's not it's kind of a good thing, but when we're talking about performance, ability, gameness, things like that, that it's not a simple monogenic trait. It's nice to know that we can improve it over time. You could buy animals that have the lowest intensity for performance ability, but over time, and it will take some time, you can improve them to the highest intensity. You're just selecting for the offspring that show it the most.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's the good thing. Because a lot of people freak out, oh, the performance ability and the gameness is low, so I need to bring in new blood to fix it. Well, you didn't fix it. You added new blood. All you did was recombinate the genes. It looks like you got it. It may be better in that particular animal, but all you did was really achieve was hybrid vigor, which is not inheritable and not passed to the next generation. So if you want to select if you want to improve a polygenic trait, you have to do it over time by selecting the highest intensity, the dogs that stand out within your strain.
Gotcha.
It's the only way to improve it.
Right.
Otherwise, you're always going to have to add new blood all the time and rely on hybrid vigor.
Yeah. Let me slide this one in because this is on topic. Does Mr. T believe an animal has to display the traits that it produces, or does he expect those who don't carry the gene but passes it? I think he answered that. The animals have to show it.
All you can do is select for the phenotype, and we'll talk about that next.
Okay.
It's it's all you have to work with is the phenotype. It's the observable traits that he's actually showing you. You can't really work with the genotype until you're breeding them and you're looking at the offspring and they're expressing it. If they don't express it, then you can't select it. So you won't know if they're carrying it until you test them. That's how you got to breed them to test them to find out what's actually in them. So whether they're carrying it or not, that's one thing, but you can't select for it if they're not expressing it. Okay.
True. Yeah.
So, let's see. So understanding the phenotype and genotype, it's going to have a big influence on the selection process, and how you improve your lines. So the phenotype, like I said, is observable trait. It's what you can see. That's your selection points. So if I'm looking at a dog that's showing really good selection points, has really good traits, has really good conformation of body, it excels in certain areas, the details of the I'm really not studied up on the different selection points of a dog. I just understand the breeding process. But if you like what you see, then you breed to it. Now, if you see dogs that are lacking in one area and that's all you have, that's one thing, you have to breed to it, match it up the best you can. If you can avoid breeding that dog, you have a better dog, breed to it, So, but the genotype is the totality of the genome. It's where you're going to find your variations, your detrimental, your deleterious genes, your lethal genes, things like that. And it's up to you whether you want to select them or cull them. because when we're talking about the genome, we're talking about unknown factors, and we're talking about hidden defects. So all you can do is when they're expressed is to either select them or cull them. And if you like them, you may need to exaggerate them to improve them, because especially when they're polygenic traits, that's how you would do it. You would select the highest intensity, exaggerate them to a point. When they finally reach where they should, then you do maybe an inbreeding to lock in those genes where they're at. And understand this too, that a lot of people think, oh, I do one inbreeding, I locked in the genes. No, it actually takes quite a bit of inbreeding to actually lock in genes. Okay. A little faster when you do like a brother sister mating, you can get there a little faster, maybe even two. Line breeding, you see how line breeding set up, it's actually multiple generations, but it takes those generations to lock in that trait. But it's not gonna happen if you add new blood. As soon as you add new blood, you just wash it all away.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I covered that. Okay, so kind of covered this, but I do want to go on, talk about a little bit more. You got to be willing to produce culls to find the standouts, and a lot of people aren't willing to do that. Okay, especially if you're going to become a breeder, you got to be comfortable with the idea that you're going to produce a cull here and there, and you're going to have to deal with it. So you got to deal with that. You got to produce as many offspring as you can. Okay, because not all offspring are going to be good, and you're going to select the standouts to move forward with. And then decide from there which ones need to be culled, and which are the standouts, which need to be culled, and which ones you can sell as breeders, or maybe they can be pets for somebody. And understand that this is a lot of this, all this variation, all these detrimental genes is all in the beginning of the program. Once you get into the foundation, your offspring will be a lot more uniform and a lot more consistent. You're not going to be dealing with a lot of defects and a lot of culls. Once you get to that point, most of the puppies they produce are actually going to be pretty good. And so the hardest part you're going to have to deal with is actually finding out the standouts, the ones that are the best that you can move forward with so you can sell the rest. That's going to be the hardest thing for you.
Right.
So,
right. And I think we need to point out too, on this journey of getting the dogs right, health is key too. Because a lot of breeders in their mind, when you say inbreeding, when you say anything to breeding close, they say health problems. Automatically,
it's only showing you what's already in there. Okay, that's the key. So if you're worried about health problems, and you're worried about doing the inbreeding, and you're worried about producing health problems, detrimental defects, deleterious genes, lethal genes, whatever. If you're that worried about it, then test them. There's a lot of companies that actually do the test and give you a good idea what's in them. And if they don't match up and the percentage is high to produce those particular traits, then don't breed those animals. Your animals are flawed. Okay. Yeah. If you want to keep outcrossing to hide those, you can do that, but you're not creating a family. You're just producing animals.
Right. Right.
Did I go out or did you go out?
I flipped out for a minute. My internet is kind of wavy, but I'm still in it to win it.
I didn't know if it was me or you.
No, that's
okay.
Me.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to be willing to produce the culls to find the standouts. And if you have to, you test them. But that's what the cleanup process is for too, is to get those animals, breed them in a way that you're pulling out the standouts so that you're getting rid of those deleterious genes as you go, so that when you get into the foundation stage, you're really not dealing with them. You might deal with one now and then, you just don't breed to it,
Right.
But so my advice is to test them when you can. If you're worried about defects and you're afraid to cull, don't inbreed, but you're not going to create a strain. Okay. If you're not willing to cull hard, don't line breed, especially the way I'm going to teach you how to line breed. But if you're not going to line breed, you're actually not creating a strain. You're not creating uniformity and consistency over time. Okay. You got to be willing to do true inbreeding and true line breeding, or don't breed at all. because you're either a breeder or you're not a breeder. You're either creating a family or you're just producing animals. And this is with all animals. Okay.
Right. Right. Okay.
Because if you're just gonna outcross, here's the thing that's funny too. Okay. You can create a family, you can inbreed it to a point when they're very pure and uniform. Okay. And then you deal with the culls that you need to go deal with as you go. And little by little, they'll get better. Okay. But here's the funny thing is every time you outcross, you are introducing the detrimental recessives, the deleterious genes, the lethals, and undesirable traits. So I think outcrossing is more dangerous than the inbreeding because every time you outcross, you're running a risk. You're taking a chance because you don't know. They might have the same phenotype, but you have no idea what's hiding in the genotype. So every time you do an outcross, you're introducing all new genes, and you won't know what's in them for generations down the road. Maybe 3 or 4 in the 3rd or 4th generation, you won't know what's actually in there from that outcross until then. But if you, like I said, if you're just going to keep outcrossing, you're going to keep introducing those genes, but you're not creating a family. You're just producing dogs. You know, so I think actually outcrossing is more dangerous than the process of inbreeding and line breeding, a true inbreeding and line breeding, where you're creating the family. And like I said, in the Founders Program, everybody's worried about the COI, the coefficient of inbreeding, getting them too closely, too tight. Well, we have a process in the Founders Program that actually fixes all that. You know,
So could you just kind of tap on that for us, like when people worry about the inbreeding depression, and how it truly doesn't pass, to the next generation.
Inbreeding depression. Yeah, inbreeding depression. Everybody's afraid of it, but it's the opposite side of hybrid vigor. It's just a lack of vigor. That's all, and it's not inheritable. And it's not passed to the next generation. So if you produce an offspring, they're showing inbreeding depression, and I would say that you could actually do a lot of inbreeding before you see inbreeding depression. It's not that easy to get to. You'd have to do a lot of inbreeding to get there.
Yeah.
Inbreeding depression is just a lack of vigor. So if you see an offspring with inbreeding depression, you just get rid of those offspring, go back 1 generation, you're good. So you don't need to worry about inbreeding depression. A lot of the traits that they want to associate with inbreeding depression isn't inbreeding depression at all. It's just poor selection most of the time. Size, conformation, performance ability. Those are all poor selection. Inbreeding depression does not affect those things. It just affects the overall health and vigor of the animal. But once you reach that point, that's why I say you got to be willing sometimes to push your animals to the limit with the breeding to find out where their limit is. Right. And once you get there, then you get rid of those offspring and you go back 1 generation and you're good.
Yeah.
It's time to lock in those genes.
Point. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Then you start locking in those genes, you know? So I wouldn't be worried about
that 3 in 1 out shit.
No, you're just, all you're doing is just disrupting the family. You're disrupting the gene pool. You're changing it. You're shuffling the genes, recombinating the genes, creating a whole new animal. Okay. All that work you put into them to get them more uniform, more consistent to make a family, is all washed away with 1 outcross. That's why when I hear you guys talk about a lot of bloodlines, but yeah, if you look at the pedigree, they're doing one of 2 things. They're either outcrossing to other people's animals every so many years, or they're bringing an animal that was on that started the line, and they're bringing it back into the pedigree 3 or 4 generations down. So they added all that old blood that they started with, that they were weeding out and culling through and improving on. They just reintroduced it into the family by bringing that 1 dog that they felt was superior back into the pedigree to freshen it up or to get more of them. There's another way to do it than that, because all they did was reintroduce genes that they were weeding out along the way.
Right.
Okay. Right. Or they're bringing in animals from the outside and completely changing the family forever. So I think outcrossing is more dangerous than people think.
Gotcha. Okay. I ain't gonna ask you no more about outcrossing. We'll stay for another show.
Yeah.
Well,
It's hard. It's hard not to talk about it because it's such a big part of the way you guys breed. And they do it with chickens too. And it was a bigger problem before I started teaching. Now I've got a lot of people trusting in my program and getting away from the outcrossing, getting away from adding new blood, understanding that that's only messing things up.
Right.
You know,
so basically what I want to summarize, and you just tell me if I'm wrong or right, that the hybrid vigor we get crossing can be done with a family of dogs by selection and culling, right?
Well, okay.
Straighten me out.
Yes and no. Okay. Yeah. Now, Joe, think about it. And don't say what it is. If you think about the Founders Program, the way it's set up. At stage 6, it resembles outcrossing in many ways.
Yeah.
That's how you could get the hybrid vigor you're looking for without destroying the family and recombinating the genes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's another way. There's a much better way. When the dog breeders I've been getting lately are getting in there, and I'm having coaching calls with them, and they're checking out the Founders Program, and they see, especially stage 5 and 6, they're like, "Oh my God, why didn't I think of that?" It like makes sense. Why have I been doing this other way? This idea of outcrossing and bringing in new blood all the time, refreshing the blood, because they're afraid of inbreeding and reaching the, they're always worried about the COI, the coefficient of inbreeding. I mean, if you inbreed all the time, that would be an issue. Okay. And when you get a high COI, or you feel like you are, then you can do what we teach in the Founders Program, and you fix it all without bringing outside blood in. So, And so I want to reiterate that don't be afraid of inbreeding. Don't be afraid of culls. Yeah, you might have to spay and neuter some. You may have to home some of them as pets. You may have to euthanize some of them. But as you go, it gets better. It does. And we're creating better animals in the long run. Better dogs. We're not breeding flawed dogs and hiding their faults through outcrossing. It does hide their faults to a point. But think of it this way too. If I'm outcrossing and I'm every so many years, I'm reintroducing new genes, new detriments. Okay. Those are stored. Those are recessive, by the way. Those are stored within the genome. They don't go away. Okay. I happen to outcross to someone else's animal that just happens to carry the same detriments. It's going to be expressed in the offspring, and I didn't even inbreed them.
Yeah, and a lot of breeders don't tell you what the hell wrong with their dogs. They just don't. They're not going to tell you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And so it just so happened that your dog and their dog carried the same deleterious genes, and it was expressed in the offspring. They do one inbreeding, and they find out exactly what's in there. So my suggestion is find the best dogs you can. If you can, test them to find out exactly what you're dealing with. Hopefully they're testing their dogs. You can match up the tests to see who's carrying what, and then you know whether it's a good match or not. So we're not just matching up phenotype. We're matching up the genotype too. We're making sure that we're not matching up recessives that are going to be harmful to the next generation. So as a breeder, you have to take a little more precautions, but or you just keep outcrossing and just produce animals, but you're not creating a family. You're just not.
Right.
There is a dark side to breeding. I don't care if it's dogs, chickens, or any other animal that every breeder should know. There is
dark side.
And you got to be willing to deal with those. But it's the good breeders who've been doing it right for a long time that are not dealing with the problems you're dealing with, because you keep reintroducing all those recessives.
Gotcha.
So, okay. Some of these we've been covering a little here and there.
Yeah, we have been knocking them out. Yeah.
Make sure your animals are worthy of breeding. So
yeah. Make
sure they're
the numbers are necessary. You kind of knock that out.
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk about that a little bit. Let's see. Not all animals should be bred. Not all animals should be used to create a strain. Not all animals should be used to improve the strain. And then I recommend testing. Okay. And you're only going to know that by working with your animals for a certain length of time, getting to know the animals, getting to know who to match up, what to look for, that kind of thing. Then you'll know. And then look at the offspring. And like I said, if the offspring are better than the parents, then you know you can move forward with them and use them to improve the strain. But if you're looking at offspring that are not as good as the parents, then God, don't breed to them, because they're only going to, when it comes to breeding, you always want to move forward, never backward. Two things. You never want to breed the offspring that are worse than the parents. You never want to bring in a dog that was that started the line, let's say, generations before, and then you reintroduce them down, like in the pedigree, was it 3 or 4 generations down, bring them back in, because now you just went backwards.
Well, that's what I've been taught, that we don't, like, I know at some point, like, especially in the beginning, you might want to go back and get some stuff off the parents, but the line is supposed to progress. It's supposed to get better and better.
Aren't you supposed to make them better each generation?
Right.
Okay. Right. So why would I introduce an animal from generations before back in and start all over again?
Yeah.
If I think that dog is that special, then I'm going to line breed him the way I'm going to teach you to line breed him, because I want to clone him.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know, should we say what line breeding is and then talk about it later on another show? I mean, I feel like we're going around it too much, but
come on, just do it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they want to hear it.
And we'll explain why, and we'll talk about why we do it the way we are. We'll go deeper in another episode, because we're going to be talking about breeding methods. It's been hard not talking about some things, and
it is. Yeah.
I'm stumbling my words because I'm trying to stay away from some things. Okay. The way I teach line breeding is, well, let me put it this way. Inbreeding, let's just do a quick explanation, and we are going to talk about it again, because I can go much deeper. When I look at inbreeding, now inbreeding to a lot of people can mean a lot of things. It can mean breeding mother to son, father to daughter, aunt to nephew, uncle to niece, cousin to cousin. Anytime you're breeding within the family, that can be considered inbreeding. But the closest form of inbreeding, the one that you want to think about the most, achieves the most, is the brother and sister mating. Do you want to do brother and sister mating over and over and over again? No. But it's a great tool for fixating and locking in genes and moving the strain forward. Okay. Yes, you're going to produce some puppies that are not good. You're going to produce some mediocres, but you're going to get some that are actually really good, and those ones you want to move forward. So that's inbreeding. Okay. Then we have in an inbreeding, which is uncle to niece, aunt to uncle, cousin to cousin, and in some ways half brother, half sister. Now, I don't want to go in depth, but I'm going to show you why that's not good in another episode. Why you're not achieving what you think you're achieving. You're not going to get the uniformity that you think you're going to get. Now, a true line breeding is breeding a common ancestor that you think is so superior and worth cloning that you're going to breed him to his daughter, granddaughter, great-granddaughter, maybe in some cases his great-great-granddaughter. Depending on how good of quality they are will depend on how far you can go. And the whole idea is to clone him, to get offspring down the road that are just like him. And then you improve them, and we can show you how to move forward from there. Because just getting to the point where that dog is cloning the original dog is not the end. That's just the beginning. Okay. So that's true line breeding, not the aunt to uncle, uncle to niece, and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
That's really still kind of scattered.
The uncle to niece, aunt to nephew, to me, that is scattered breeding, because you're not breeding as close as you need to get the uniformity and consistency that you need. You're just, now that kind in an inbreeding can be used for maintaining a line, but not for creating or improving a line. If you look at like spiral mating, like a clan mating system, it's typically inbreeding, line breeding. No, it's not line breeding, inbreeding, and in an inbreeding within its core. So you have 3 particular clans. You're basically rotating the males each generation to the next clan. It's a great maintenance program, but you're not going to make a lot of improvement. And any improvement you do see is all going to be through culling, a little bit of selection, but mostly culling, because you're dealing with the numbers. Okay. But so you're not going to get the improvement you think you're going to get through that method. The only two methods that really improve, and there are two methods. We have 6 methods within the Founders Program, and 2 of them are, one of them is inbreeding, which is used for a particular reason. A lot of people say, oh, you inbreed what you want. Inbreeding is something you do, and you think, well, inbreeding, we think of inbreeding as a tool. It's used for a specific reason for a particular result. You don't inbreed just inbreed. You don't inbreed just any animals. You got to make sure the animals you're inbreeding are good. They're ready for the inbreeding. And you're trying to achieve a particular purpose. Okay, I don't want to say what that is here. Right. Line breeding is a method of cloning, but there are certain things that have to be done before you line breed. There's certain things you have to do after you line breed. And there's something within the line breeding program that you have to do that I don't want to say here. A lot of people, I can see a lot of my members there. They know what I'm talking about. Please don't say it. That's my bread and butter of the website. Okay. That's a big part of the Founders Program, but it achieves what you guys are looking for. It keeps you from having to add outside blood to do the outcross and recombinate the genes and completely start over every time you do it. This is going to improve the family over time, and you're going to see great results. Mm-hmm. Okay. But in an inbreeding, it just doesn't achieve what you think it's going to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Okay. Now the numbers are important because I see this a lot, and I've had to talk to a handful of my members that had a couple dogs and they wanted to start a breeding program. Now, the numbers are important with any animal that you're breeding with, as dog, chickens, or any livestock or whatever. Is it, unless you have the right numbers, you're not going to achieve anything. Yes, you can start with one male and female and move forward, but there's going to be a time when you're going to have to increase the number of animals that you're actually breeding. Okay. So you have to have the facilities that will manage that. You can't say I've got 4 or 5 dogs and that makes up a program or that makes up a family. It doesn't work like that. If you look at the way the Founders Program is broken up, you're going to realize it's going to take a number of dogs. Now, how many dogs? The only thing I can say is it's going to determine where in the program you are, which will determine how many dogs that you need to actually fulfill them. That's why I say try to specialize or commit to one breed. Because if you look at the way the Founders Program set up, which I think is the best program out there, it's nearly impossible unless you're rich and have a huge facility to manage more than one breed, to do it properly. Okay. Not only that, but you have to have the right numbers to produce enough puppies to select properly. Because if you're only producing a handful of puppies here and there, your selection is going to be low. You're not going to get the selection that you need to find the standouts and move the family forward. So you need to think about that too. So the numbers are very important.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that's kind of a hard thing for us, but I know guys who got 100 dogs. I know guys 25 dogs and on down. But the numbers, if you don't have some ability to which just makes it hard. We got kennel partners.
Oh, I want to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a personality thing with me. It's a hard deal for me. I like being in charge of my own destiny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I get that. That's not something I would suggest for chicken breeders.
Right.
But I actually would suggest it for dog breeders.
Okay.
Because it would be tough to have the right amount of dogs for one person and one piece of property. I think this is where having partners, preferably 3 of you, 2 partners, to manage the family. But they got to be willing to maintain the integrity of the blood.
They got to be.
Keep it pure.
You got to be like on the same accord. You got to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
They can't be bringing in new blood. They got to be willing to keep the never sell the best ones. Okay. Never breed to anything that's substandard or not superior. So yeah, there's got to be there's a trust factor there. And I think that's something, if you're going to create a family and you want to do it properly, depending on where you're at in the Founders Program or any program that's right, sometimes it is going to take having partners to get it done, because you need the numbers to make it work. Without the numbers, it just doesn't work.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So when someone tells me that I think I can create a family, or I hear someone online saying I have a family, or all you need is 3 or maybe even 5 dogs to create and maintain a family, I don't, that's a very low number. Maybe you can start that way, but that's not going to work down the road at all.
Mm-hmm. Right. I hear so many guys reaching out to me, man, let's work. I'm like, brother, we don't even got the same type dogs. You know what I mean? So it's hard. That's hard. It's a hard thing. That's something I'm gonna have to think about.
Okay. So the other one is interesting, and it kind of goes in with the name game is I don't think one animal should ever represent the foundation of a whole family. And it's hard to explain exactly because we're looking at the Founders Program, and you see this, like they say, okay, if you see this particular animal that's showing up over and over within a pedigree, and it's all based on him, I think that's a mistake. Okay, unless you're doing a line breeding program with that animal and you're trying to clone him, that's one thing. But I believe that multiple animals make up a family, not just one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I could have a superior animal and I could base the whole line on him, and then I bring in a female, and she's gonna dilute a lot of his influence. Okay, so what I think he's presenting into the family, or putting into the family, or providing the family, she's going to wipe a lot of that out. Now, I'm a firm believer that the female is the matriarch of the family in so many ways, genetically and practically. If we look at mitochondrial DNA, she has a huge influence over her offspring. She has a lot to do with how healthy they are, how well they grow and develop, their overall health, that kind of thing. She has a huge influence on that, something that he almost can't even provide. His benefit is that sometimes, and this is a male thing, is prepotency. If you have a superior male and he's got good prepotency, you're going to see a lot of his, not exactly his genes, but his quality and his offspring. And if you match him up to a female with good mitochondrial DNA, and you see that by seeing how healthy she is, how active she is, she never gets sick. Every time she produces a litter, all the offspring are healthy. They never get sick, never show faults or anything. She has good mitochondrial DNA. Put her with a dog with good prepotency, and you have offspring like you wouldn't believe. Okay. Now, his benefit is prepotency. Unless he's a poor specimen, then she becomes a prepotent mate, and she'll take over for him. But the male benefits in that he can produce a lot of offspring because you can breed him to a lot of females. Is that a good thing? Depending on your breeding program and what you plan to do with it. Maybe in the beginning of the program, but not later. Like I said, one dog should never represent the whole family. It should be multiple dogs. Okay. Right. I've seen and I've seen this across the board with chickens, with other livestock animals, where a female can actually make up for a poor male. Very rarely have I seen a good male cover up or make up for a poor female. So I'm a firm believer. I actually like to head my lines with females because I get more from them.
The best females possible.
Overall, best females. I have 2 out of all my lines out there. I have 2 male lines. The rest are all females. And I have a healthier strain. I never have to feed them or provide antibiotics or vaccines or medicines, nothing like that,
Yeah.
They're the really healthy birds, and I see this across the board, where if you're hitting things or basing everything on the female line, you're going to make bigger progress. She can only produce so many puppies. I get it. And the male's going to produce a lot more puppies if you breed them to multiple females. But is the quality going to be there?
Right.
So when I'm selecting or looking for dogs to start my line with, I'm looking for those signs of evidence of mitochondrial DNA. So I want to see their dogs. Okay. I want a nice, healthy male, of course. Okay. And have all the traits that I would look for in a male. But I'm looking for the females that look really active and healthy, and the puppies are real active and healthy. I don't see any issues. There's no sick. If they're telling me they're feeding their animals or the puppies with a lot of medications, getting them over colds and everything, I'm out of there. That's showing me a female that really has poor mitochondrial DNA. You know?
Yeah. In our world, there's a terminology used. Can he produce himself? Can he produce himself?
Prepotency.
Yeah. A lot of stock on the stud, the male.
Yeah.
So you said the female is.
I think the female is more important.
Yeah.
I think the male is important. Don't neglect the male, but the female is more important.
Yeah.
Mitochondrial DNA is kind of interesting because it's outside the nucleus. So it doesn't go through meiosis, the crossover event, like the other chromosomes do within the nucleus. So it never changes. The only thing that changes, so if you're selecting good females right off the bat, and this is so important when you're actually selecting your females in the beginning to start your strain, that if you're selecting good females right off the bat with good mitochondrial DNA, chances are she's going to pass that. And she does pass it to both her sons and her daughters, but it's only the females can pass it from generation to generation.
Right.
Okay. So the males do benefit from good mitochondrial DNA. They just can't pass it. So if she has good mitochondrial DNA, then I'm almost assured that her daughters, every generation after that, are going to produce really good offspring too. Okay. The only thing that's going to change the mitochondrial is mutations, which don't happen as much as you think, and they don't usually take hold. And a lot of times they only take hold if you actually breed to the mutation. So if you see mutations or poor specimens, don't breed to them. And chances are that whatever mutations that showed up or were expressed in the mitochondrial won't take hold, and you'll be able to move forward.
Gotcha.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes, she becomes really, really important. And understand too, that here's the other thing too, why I wouldn't base all my, I wouldn't base one male. How do I say this? One male shouldn't represent the whole family is what we were talking about before, which would be the fact that a lot of the traits that we are looking for in our dogs, a lot of people think it's dominant recessive. It's actually not. It's the polygenic traits we're looking for. So as long as, if we're not selecting for that, and we're not improving it by selecting for the highest intensity, and we're not doing that with multiple dogs, and that family is all based on one dog, you can go in the wrong direction really fast and not make the progress you think you're going to make. See, a lot of people don't understand how important polygenics are, and they think everything is dominant recessive. Very few things, not as much as you think, are dominant recessive. And a lot of the things that they base on dominant recessive are the dominant recessive traits that are on the sex chromosome, which are even fewer than the ones that are autosomes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We need to put more attention on the polygenics, the polygenic traits that the dog carries. By selecting to the highest intensity, we're going to improve them a lot faster. You know, the only way those dominant, if it's a dominant trait, if they have it, it's expressed. The only thing we don't know is whether it's pure or not. If they're expressing a recessive trait, we know it's pure. So once you get them started, the monogenic traits take care of themselves. You know, as long as you're not selecting for throwbacks every now and then that can disrupt the family, you're good. So just select for the polygenic traits, and you're going to make more progress down the road.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So purity, a recessive is a sign of purity?
Well, it can be. I mean, yeah, because if it's expressing a recessive trait, then you know it's pure for that trait.
Oh, yeah, because both of them carry the trait. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It doesn't mean the family's pure. It just means that trait is pure.
Pure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Both parents. Okay.
And understand this too, is anytime we outcross or add new blood, a lot of times we're losing the homozygous dominant traits we want that are really important. Okay. We end up with heterozygous dominant traits that are going to express variation within our offspring that we don't want. Okay. Or we're going to introduce recessives, which either could be good or bad. And and a lot of times they are bad. Almost every defect, every detrimental gene, or every detrimental defect, every deleterious gene that we get are either mutations, which is rare, or
Right.
the recessive.
Right.
So anytime we're outcrossing, we have a good chance, and chances are we have brought in deleterious genes, and they stay forever. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You said I can't say it.
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous. And
Yeah.
what was the D word?
Dominant?
No, the one of the last words you used, but heterozygous. What does that mean?
Heterozygous?
Yeah. What does that mean? You break
Just
that down.
means it's an impure trait.
Impure. Okay.
Yeah, impure. Means we're going to see a variation within the offspring.
Okay.
So we're going to see some that are dominant, and we're going to see some that are recessive.
All right. All right.
As soon as we match up two recessives carrying the same gene, whether it's a trait or a defect or a deleterious gene, the offspring will have it and express it.
Gotcha. If I hear somebody saying that word, I know they got it from you.
No, it's a common. It's anybody who knows anything about genetics should know that one. You know.
Gotcha.
So, we're actually flying through this. I was hoping to get through it. We are actually flying through it. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Now the name game is interesting.
The name game.
Mm-hmm. Which I thought it was just a chicken thing, a game fowl thing. I'm finding out you guys are suffering from it too.
Yeah.
And whenever I see someone passing names from long ago or even 10, 20 years ago, they're playing the name game. Okay. Because especially when they're doing so much outcrossing along the way, because they may have had that name, but every time they did an outcross, they dilute it, whatever that name was attached to. Not to mention that a gene's a gene, the trait's a trait, that the traits that dog had, other dogs have too. The only difference would be the intensity of his polygenic traits, which you can lose overnight. Anytime you do an outcross, you've wiped it out. And we see this in the chicken world too, where we're holding on to names like Hatch and Kelso and Sweater, names that were like almost 100 years ago now. And we're still holding on to them. But you go through different yards, and this guy has a Hatch, and that guy across town has a Hatch, but they're different. They hold on to the name, but the animals are different.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you were to do a DNA test, you'd be surprised how different they actually are.
Mm-hmm.
So the name, that's why I'm kind of hesitant about relying on pedigrees, because the names that are on the pedigree might have been something at that time, but the genes of that particular dog aren't around anymore. They're just not. You know what I mean? So when you're looking at a pedigree and you see different animals coming into the pedigree from outside, those animals have changed the family forever every time they've done that. So whatever names were behind that don't exist anymore.
That's right. Because we talked about that on another pod, and he was saying that even that breeder might not select it the way you selected, so they couldn't be the same dogs. They couldn't be.
Between the outcrossing and the way people select, does the pedigree really mean anything? I don't know. Yeah. You like to know that they kept the family pure, that they didn't go outside the breed, but I wouldn't rely. If I was getting into dog breeding, I wouldn't rely on a pedigree.
Yeah.
I would do my best to find the best breeder in that particular breed, get to know them, talk to him, get a feel for him, see if he knows what he's talking about. Does he understand genetics? Does he understand the selection process? Does he have a breeding program? Does he actually follow the breeding program, the process of that program? Then I look at his animals. Okay. I don't want to see one good animal. I want to see a whole bunch of good animals. Is there some uniformity, consistency?
Yeah.
What he say match what I see?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
After that, I want to get the best male and female I can. And I don't care about anything that's behind that dog at all. I want to start from where I'm at. That's my Adam and my Eve. And I'm starting the family from there. Mm-hmm. If I understand the breed, I understand what I'm supposed to select and cull for, what defects are. And that's another thing I'd ask the breeder. What's the common defects in his family? He should know that.
He should know.
Every breed
knows what's wrong with their dogs.
I don't care what breed it is, whether it's a dog, livestock, poultry, game fowl, whatever. If that is a true breeder, he should know what the common defects are in his dogs, because he gets them from time to time. And if he says nothing, then there's something wrong there. Yeah. I want to know what they are because I want to look for them.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So once I understand the dog, I understand the breeding process, I understand the traits that they're expressing and the genetic factors of those traits, then I can select properly and I can move them forward. And then I just know that I'm going to get good dogs and bad dogs in the beginning. And I'm going to clean them up by selecting the best dogs that they produce, get rid of the rest of them. And little by little, they're going to get better. As long as I'm selecting offspring that are better than the parents, I'm going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not going to be afraid to inbreed when I need to inbreed. I'm not going to be afraid to line breed when I need to line breed. Okay. Because I know, like in the Founders Program, I know there's a mechanism that's going to keep them from getting too tight. Okay. And that's the key of the Founders Program, is to inbreed and still manage the COI. And nobody does that. They think they're managing the COI by outcrossing. Outcrossing is creating more problems than the inbreeding would ever create. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Kenny, you're shaking it up. You're shaking it up.
am I pissing anybody off yet?
No.
I thought I would. I thought I would get some hate mail by now.
Well, you know, we all here to learn off each other. And then one thing you said that is kind of a blanket belief system is that's starting to change with people, because it's been mentioned on our show a lot lately, is the who you gonna trust, the breeder or the pedigree. And I think everybody kind of know now. Look, I better go to this breeder and really learn what I need to be doing. And even if you can't afford to start off with a duo,
yeah,
you could start off with a female and still work with that breeder.
Yeah.
Your money ain't right, and you can go back and maybe pay a stud fee and things like that too. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the only thing with that is I can talk about the first part of the Founders Program.
Mm-hmm.
It limits you a little bit. Now, we talked about inbreeding. Oh, no, we talked about line breeding the way I think it should be, or the way it really is. Okay. A lot of people confuse backcrossing with line breeding.
Mm-hmm.
They're backcrossing when they think they're line breeding, and they're line breeding when they're actually backcrossing. Okay. So a lot of times when you're starting with a male and female, which is your Adam and Eve, you breed them, you look at the offspring, and the first question you ask yourself is, are the offspring better than the parents? If they are, then you just move forward.
Mm-hmm.
If not, then you need to pick the best offspring. Well, actually, what you do is look at the mother and father and say, oh, which one's the best out of the two? And there's always one that's better than the other. If you bought a female, and this is where the issue could be, you can work around it, but let's say you only got the female, then you're forced to go with the female. But if you had the male too, you can look at the male and female and say, well, in this case, the male's better. So I'm going to backcross his best daughter to him, which is normally going to give me offspring that are better than him. Then I can move forward. So backcrossing is a great tool to use in the beginning to get you to go forward without moving forward with inferior animals. Because obviously the Adam and Eve that you're starting with were good enough to buy and breed. So if they just happen, maybe their genes didn't match up properly, so you're going to get offspring that are a little off. Maybe they're just not as good as the parents. Then you're going to select the best offspring to breed back to them. Not both the male and the female, just one. You need to pick one or the other, because backcrossing is breeding a parent to their hybrid offspring. Much different than, it looks the same as line breeding, but it's not. Line breeding has a completely different purpose than backcrossing. And when you're doing the backcross, that's all you're trying to do is get a little more from the parent so that you can move forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you want to set yourself up properly so that you're going into the foundation stage with the right animals. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting it. You're going to see the genetic diversity. You're going to see the variation. You're just not going to get there unless you do the cleanup process first. And depending on the quality of the Adam and Eve will depend on how much cleanup you need to do. And that's why if you start with a really good male and female from a really good breeder, you save yourself a lot of time, money, and effort. And you'll go through the cleanup process a lot quicker than you normally would, So that's really key. Now, when you're buying a male and female from a different breeder, even though they're the same breed and variety, are their genes going to match up? Well, they could or they couldn't, because maybe some outcrossing went on in those two families. And when you bring them together, who knows what's going to express in the offspring? And that's something you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to probably do some culling, and you're going to have to determine from those offspring which were the standouts so you can move forward. You know, that's the problem. That's the only problem with breeding animals from two different breeders. You're going to see variation in the offspring. You just are.
Yeah. Lengthens the journey a little bit.
If you start with animals that aren't quite up to par or have some issues, yeah, you're gonna. You can get there still. I've seen in every breed of animal, chickens, livestock. I've seen them start with some pretty awful. I did too. Start with some pretty awful individuals, and through patience and perseverance and following the program, you can get there. You actually can, because even though you're only dealing with the phenotype, you're only dealing with what the animal can show you. You just don't know what's in the genotype, what's in the genome, ready to be expressed over time. Will it be expressed in the first mating? Maybe not. Maybe some of it will. But you take advantage of those as they're expressed as you go. So you either cull them or you breed. The ones expressed, you either cull them or you breed to them. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other one was the truth about bloodlines. Now this cracks me up, and I think we did talk about a little bit in that a lot of people say they have foundation lines, they have bloodlines. As soon as they told me they have to do an outcross every now and then, they don't have a bloodline. They just don't have a bloodline, because every time they did the outcross, they destroyed the bloodline. It's no longer a family. So that's my problem with calling whatever you have a foundation line or a bloodline. As soon as you do that outcross, you destroy the bloodline. Even if you've bred the family for 10 years and you decide you need to do an outcross, you just, after 10 years, you just destroy the family. We in the Founders Program will show you how to avoid that, how you can keep the family pure without adding new blood over many years, forever. You know,
you starting to get a lot of dog breeders. Do they ever tell you that, okay, we keep our families pure, but for performance, we always outcross? The hybrid always give us what? Do you hear that?
Yeah, all animals. And that's there's a number of ways you can do that. Now, I have no problem with that. It's just that the hybrid animal is a superior animal, but it's not a breeding animal. It's not an animal that can be bred into your line and move it forward. So if you're crossing two animals to produce hybrid vigor for performance, production, or whatever it may be, that's fine. I mean, that's a superior animal for that particular purpose, but it's not a breeding animal. The only time I would breed that animal is if I'm starting the strain, not to bring into an already established strain and think I'm going to improve it. Because even though he's superior, the traits he's carrying aren't inheritable or can be passed to the next generation. So I'm just going to mix up the blood. I'm going to recombinate the genes even more by bringing him into the family. And anytime I do any kind of experimentation, I never want to mess with the foundation. Anytime I do experimentation, I always want to do it separately on a subline where I'm not touching the foundation and messing them up, because you'd be surprised how those don't pan out. They don't work out. And if they do down the road, which would take multiple generations, it's like running another Founders Program. Then if you're sure that it's working, then you can, it's at that point, a good portion of the genes are from the original family at that point, and you're sure that it's better. It's not going to be a few generations, it's going to be many generations. Then you can infuse it into the family and probably not hurt anything.
Oh, gotcha.
But I'd be very careful of that to make sure.
Right.
Maybe even do another generation just to make sure, because you've crossed them. You create the hybrid vigor. Okay. And then what you're doing is you're breeding your foundation animals, hopefully the best ones, into that line and improve them as they go. And then after many generations, if they're actually better than the original generation or original foundation, you either go with this, abandon the other one, or you infuse it to the other one and hope it improves it. But I would make sure.
Right.
But a hybrid animal is not a breeding animal. And if you want to get in the game of producing hybrid animals, then you do what they call recumbent reciprocal selection. So you maintain 2 pure families. Okay. Then you cross them, you produce your hybrids, but never breed those hybrids. We call that recombinant reciprocal selection.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So, I mean, everybody wants to make. I look at everybody's breeding program online. You go on YouTube and they're writing out their breeding programs on. They're so confusing and so complicated.
Yeah,
You've seen the Founders Program. It doesn't have to be that complicated.
No.
But you should be able to see that when you're matching up your animals and going down the line through the program, you should see where the improvements are going to be. You should see that when you bred that animal to another animal, that it's to achieve a particular purpose. And when I look at these other breeding programs, I don't see it. I just don't see how they're improving or even building the family or creating a family. The Founders Program is broke up into what the Founders Program is, it's multiple methods used at the proper time for the proper length of time. And it takes your family from one step to the next, and each step improves it. You've got your cleanup process. You got your, what we call the genesis stage. You got the transformation stage, and then you have the foundation stage. And then we have the maintenance program. And you can see the way it's set up that it takes you step by step into improvement. And it shows you what you should be looking for, that kind of thing. Now, I will say this, we are getting a number of dog breeders, which is awesome. Okay. And I think the program, Joe's seen it, and he said that he likes it the way it is. But we are going to create, and I'm working on it right now, we're going to create a program just for dogs. So it's going to have the breeding methods explained. It's going to have, there's going to be 2 ways you could do the Founders Program. One, if you're dealing with dogs that have a lot of issues that need a lot of cleanup, there's going to be that one. Or if you start with dogs that come from a good breeder, well-established family, and doesn't need a lot of cleanup, then there'll be another program for that. So I'm excited about this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Let me ask you this before you go on. You said that a hybrid vigor animal is a superior animal. Can you obtain the same thing with outcrossing?
With the Founders Program,
Okay.
with stage 5 and stage 6.
Okay, thank you.
Look, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let me explain hybrid vigor so you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Hybrid vigor is basically what we call heterosis. So when you breed 2 animals that are not related, that are good animals, we're not talking about sick, poor animals. Okay, we're talking about good animals.
Good animals, yeah.
They produce offspring. Let's say the original parents, which are not related, represent 100% of their potential, whatever that happens to be at the time. So I breed them together. I produce offspring that are actually, bigger, better, faster, smarter, stronger, everything. They have just everything the parents have, but a lot better, much superior. Okay. So they a lot of times can actually represent as much as 120 to 100%, 130% of the original parent's potential, which is outstanding. Okay. So I breed those offspring, I breed those 2 animals either together or 2 other hybrids, and they don't go up. They don't go to 140, 150. They don't even maintain 120, 130, and they won't maintain the 100 that their original parents were. They actually fall down to, let's say, 80% of the original parents' potential. That's why hybrid vigor is a delusion. It's not passed from generation to generation. It's a one-time deal. The hybrid animal is the product. It shouldn't go any further than that. Okay, that's why I cringe when you guys say you guys are outcrossing to bring in new blood because you're worried about the COI. You're worried about too much inbreeding, because all you're doing is creating hybrid vigor, which isn't anything to look forward to, really. I hear some people saying, I bred them this way so that I can maintain hybrid vigor. You don't maintain hybrid vigor. You create it. It's a one-time deal, and then it's done.
Yeah.
There's no way to maintain it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So when we're talking about pure lines, anytime you add, let's say 2 animals are not related, you basically hybrid vigor, but you're hybridizing You're doing hybridization. Okay. So now I do, let's say a couple years later, I do another outcross. I went from hybridization to mongrelization. I know you guys don't want to hear that, but every time you do another outcross, you're mongrelizing the blood, whatever it's there. I'm not going to say bloodline, but you're mongrelizing the blood. They may have the right phenotype and they may look like their breed, but they are genetically mutts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. They're genetically mutts. Okay. What's that?
So I'm with you. I'm following.
Okay. Okay. Next to
don't hold back so much, Kenny. Don't hold back so much.
I think I only have a couple. Let's see. Okay. How many I got? Oh, I've got a few. Okay.
Okay. All right.
You tell me when you're done. Okay.
Well, I'm fine. I know it's probably earlier where, what time is it where you are?
8 o'clock or almost 8 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. I'm good.
We can do part 2. Let's see. What do I got here? I mean, I even put some on the end that we could do if we had time. We could do a part 2 if you want to.
Well, let's knock out. If you feel up to it, I do. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Let's knock out a few more, and then let's try to get some of these questions in from the audience.
I'll take the questions anytime they come in.
Okay.
So.
Okay. How about wait, go ahead, Kenny. I'll let some y'all bring them in. Bring the questions in. Go ahead, Kenny. You can start on something else if you
like. Along with the name game is a percentage game. Now, anytime people are saying you got 50% of this or 50% of that or 3/4 of this or quarter of that or 1/8 or 7/8, genetics doesn't work that way because some genes cancel out others. Some are either higher intensity or lower intensity. So whenever you match 2 animals together, you never know, unless you understand the blood, which animals are going to take over more than the others. And that's why you can't attach a name to it, because the names can't be carried to the next generation in a percentage. Like I said, genetics doesn't work that way. It's all about the presence or expression of genes. And one parent, depending on, what traits they carry, which are homozygous dominant versus recessive, could determine which ones are expressed or which ones are hidden. Okay. Because you never know which dog has the dominant genes versus the recessive genes, which has a higher intensity of polygenic genes. And then you're dealing with the sex-linked genes. Okay. So we never know what the true percentages that are coming from the mother and father. And if you're going to attach a name to that, then it just doesn't work. So to me, anytime anybody's using percentages, 50-50, 3/4, whatever, they don't really understand how genetics works. We got to get away from the name game and the percentage game. Look for uniformity, consistency, purify the blood, look for improvement within the offspring that show that they're better than the parents and move forward. Keep from bringing in outside blood to refresh them or thinking we're improving them. There's other ways to protect the COI, to keep the level of COI down. Okay. Without having to bring in outside blood. Now, I know a lot of people, they want to keep saying that, and I think it's just because I think there's some breeders that actually practice what I'm teaching, but are afraid to tell people to inbreed or purify the line because they're afraid they can't do it. Yeah. Because if it goes wrong, it comes back to them.
Yeah.
And the way to protect themselves is to prefer them that they outcross, because that hides all their mistakes. Okay. A good breeder will either do one of 2 things. He's a good breeder and has good animals, and he has faith in his animals. So he knows that they can handle the inbreeding, or he knows there's a lot of faults and flaws in those animals. So he prefers the outcrossing so he can keep hiding those flaws and faults. Or is a new breeder who just was told to outcross, and he just keeps telling people to outcross.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of an underworld dealing with dogs of people who, like, this conversation would be considered what they call aggressive breeder. So, I mean, but it is a few guys who believe in this type. I mean, they're getting in the books and everything, but they just don't come out in the open. That's what I was told. Said Joe, I called up one of popular one in the country that I knew he works with True Bloodlines. He said, Joe, I know who you are. I know who Triano is. And us breeders that breed this way, we just don't come out publicly. And because we have people calling us puppies. How close did you breed that dog? I think I don't want to buy it. They get wrapped up into the propaganda of it, not getting true education on what's going on.
You may call it aggressive breeding, but to me it's breeding. You're
Right.
either breeding, you're either a breeder or you're not a breeder. You're either creating a strain or you're just producing animals.
Mhm.
I mean, I told you there's an ugly side to breeding.
It is.
And you're either willing to accept that or you're not, or you're just producing animals. I saw Rick saying, what's COI? COI is the coefficient of inbreeding. And a lot of people try to stay around 6%. I think that's low. I don't think that's anything to worry about. They start to get a little concerned when they get to 25% and they freak out when they get to 40%. But even 40%, if you're not seeing the evidence of inbreeding depression in the offspring, then to me, you're good. Okay. I wouldn't go farther than that. I wouldn't keep inbreeding to a point when unless you're trying to like bring it to the extreme that I was talking about earlier. You got to take them to their limits sometimes, especially when you're trying to create a family. You need to know where that limit is, because the closer you can inbreed, the better overall conformation, uniformity, consistent you're going to get, and you're going to clean them up pretty fast. So it's not the idea to get 100% COI. You know what I mean? But a lot of people are they start doing the math and trying to figure out the coefficient of inbreeding, and they start freaking out. They can handle a lot more inbreeding than you think.
Right.
And if you're worried about COI and you're worried about the inbreeding, then get them tested and find out what's in them. And if you're worried about the animals you're breeding too, have them test theirs. Even if you have to pay for it, okay, have them test. If you're that sure that dog is for you, pay for it, okay, and then match them up and see whether they line up and determine whether you're going to be able to accept that, because you're going to get. Doesn't mean that all the offspring are going to show that defect. It just shows you that some of them could. Okay, and then when they do, you cull it, and then you breed to the ones that aren't showing that defect, and little by little, that defect will be more and more hidden to the point that you won't see it.
Right. Kenny, I want to ask a question, and it's down in our notes, but this is a big question. How long does it take to create a family?
Depends on the quality of the quality of animals you start with. I always tell people it could take, if you're starting with really good animals, because your selection process is going to be different, your location, your geographical area is going to be different. So epigenetics can play a factor when the environment is completely different. Some genes are going to be turned off that were on before. Some are going to lose their intensity, or some genes are going to be turned on that weren't turned on before. But if you're starting with really good quality animals and your environment is very close to theirs, I would say 5 or 6 years it would take to create your strain out of the animals that you bought. Animals with flaws could take 10 or 15 years, depending on how much you need to clean up. Yeah.
And here's another one. And let me see if there's any question. Countryside Corso, I made it finally. We're glad you're here. Is pedigree, and we kind of touched on this, but is pedigree important?
See, I think overall, I think it's a tool that can be looked at and maybe help you a little bit, but I don't think it should be the determining factor. Right. I think the quality of the breeder and the animals he's producing should be the determining factor in whether you buy them and move forward with them. Because once you get them and start breeding them, the offspring, no matter how good they are and how true he is, and whether the pedigree's exactly right, when you get them on your farm, they could produce a completely different offspring than what he's producing. And you got to be able to move forward with that. That doesn't mean that there's a problem. It just means you have work to do. Okay. If I were to buy dogs from even Joe, Okay. If I were to buy a couple dogs from Joe and I wanted to start producing the dogs here, I would expect to see variation in the offspring and know that I'm going to have to make them my own.
Yeah.
I would expect that. Not because Joe could be a great breeder for all I know, but I just know because he's in Arkansas, is it?
Yeah,
And
Arkansas.
I'm in San Diego area,
Right.
that there's going to be some differences, whether it's genetic, the effects of epigenetics, my selection process. He can't stand over my shoulder and select every animal. His idea of a standout is going to be different than my idea of a standout. 10 years later, my animals could be completely different than his.
I know that to be true because I have a dog off the same litter as a guy in Michigan, and they look totally different.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
do it with chickens, you know.
Yeah.
If I were to buy a dog from somebody, he'd hand me the pedigree. I'd glance at it, fold up, stick it in my pocket, probably never look at it again.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
care. It doesn't
Right.
matter,
Yeah.
you know. So
Right.
that's just me.
Yeah.
You know?
I was taught, go to the yard, go to that breeder, and figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
One of the other things I see is now here's an example I saw online, so I wrote it down to use it as my example, is don't breed to extremes.
Okay.
Okay, a lot of people, I see it in all animals. The one I got here is a short tail versus a long tail. Depending on the dog you're breeding, the short tail could be the one you want, or depending on the breed, it could be the long tail. Okay, so, or it could be something in the middle, and so you think by breeding the short tail to the long tail, you're going to get something in between. It doesn't really work that way. Whenever you're breeding to extremes, you're dealing with polygenic inheritance. So understand that whenever you're trying to improve a trait, it's all about selecting to the highest intensity, and it's going to take some time. It's not a monogenic trait, it's a polygenic trait. So we're looking at quantitative inheritance, something that's measurable, showing variation. We select to the highest intensity. Over time, we fix it. So don't think by breeding two extremes together, you're going to get what you want. Very rarely does that work. And depending on the trait, those extremes, one trait could be an actual trait, where the other extreme could be another trait. So what happens? You bring them together, and a lot of times you get offspring that show both. It's not what you expected. It's not in the middle. It's actually you get some with that trait and you get some with the other trait. Okay, so the idea is to select the animals within your stock or your family that are the closest to that trait, where the closest to that, let's say the middle tail is what you're looking for, the middle length tail. Okay, well, I look for the animals that are the closest to that, and I breed those together.
Mhm.
And little by little, I'll get there. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. I feel like I'm going so fast that I'm just mumbling, so I hope I'm making sense today.
No, you got
I
it.
knew this was a huge outline, and I really wanted to get through it. I didn't think you really wanted to have. We have so many lessons that we're going to do that to extend this would not maybe be fun. Who knows?
Yeah. But yeah, you've been knocking them out though. Yeah.
I am. I'm moving right through them, you know. So, is this the last one? Because this should be the last one. Let me see. Oh, good. Okay. So understand that when you're starting out, starting with perfect animals is very difficult. Whether they have them, whether they're able to let them go, but just know that by getting the best animals possible, you can improve them over time and you can get there. Okay. Know that, especially in the beginning of the program, you are going to see variation within the offspring. You're not going to get perfect animals right away. A lot of people think, oh, I bought this great specimen over here and this one over here. I'm going to put them together. I'm going to get perfect offspring. Very rarely does that actually happen. It's all about, especially in the beginning, is selecting the best to move forward with. Cull the defects and sell the other ones as pets, or if they're still good, just not to your quality, then you sell them as breeders to other people. That would probably be fine as long as there are not some serious issues. Okay. And then as you go, once you get into the foundation stage, the quality of the animals or the offspring that you're producing will get better, and you'll see better litters, better puppies. But again, they're not going to be perfect. It's not about, you want to strive for perfection, but you may never reach it, because the closer you get to perfection, the more it moves away from you. But the more you strive towards perfection, the more you reach excellence. And that's the key. It's to just get them better and better all the time.
Right, right. Here's Martin. I want to highlight this comment. One issue with dog breeders is we sell a pup 10 weeks and we might not know that it's a cull until it's 6 months old. That's why I think some breeders would rather hide defects by mongrelizing their dogs.
Yeah. Well, defects you're going to see whether the puppy is most of the time. You're going to see if the puppy's like a week old or a month old or 2 months old or whatever. Most defects you're going to see right away.
Mm-hmm.
Other issues may like conformation of body type. Those will change as the animal grows. That could be an issue. You're gonna. Sometimes it's better to hold on to the animals as long as you can, and it gets easier. The more you breed, the longer you have the family, the better you get to know them. Like mine, I could actually probably let some offspring go, what we call quill size trios, because I know my animals. I know within 6 weeks old is when we a lot of times start letting them go. I know the family so well. I know which ones I can let go and which ones I can't, which ones I want to hold on to. Once you get to know your family, you'll get to know their idiosyncrasies,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll know which animals are going to need to be culled, and you can start seeing the standouts starting to show up right away. And you'll know that, you know what I mean? In the beginning, it's hard because you don't know the family, you don't know the animals, and it'll be tough to determine which ones are the standouts. So I understand that dilemma for sure. And but I don't think adding new blood is the answer.
Gotcha. Martin says, why wouldn't you be an aggressive breeder? I don't want to do it.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing I want to see. Absolutely. Yeah.
Martin, did you join back the academy? He's supposed to have joined.
Oh, was he a member?
He was a member at one point, yeah, and then he had a baby.
Oh, yeah, I'll do it.
Can I give baby discounts? No, I'm kidding.
You know what? If he was a member before, contact me. I have special deal for past members, former members. Yeah, contact me. I'll give them a deal.
Right. Okay.
Because most of the people, when they leave, it's rare. I maybe seen. No, I don't think I've seen any. I was gonna say, I think I saw one person left because they didn't like the website. It wasn't that they didn't like it; they thought they already knew everything. Okay, which was surprising. Okay, whatever. You're in there for a week and you know everything. You can't even get through all the material in a week. But most people have to leave because of other issues. Most people don't want to leave. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of time it's financial with things going on right now. So.
Or a new baby will do it.
Yeah, a new baby. Yeah.
Quit having babies, man.
Yeah. Stop it. Yeah. So we wide open for questions, guys. Do you want to get them in?
Sure. Because these were extra, these other questions, which I can add to the other parts of the outline. So that's not a problem.
I mean, we don't have any now. So if you want to tap in on any of that, I actually tapped on 2 of them, 26,
okay.
27.
Let me see. Good question. Well, we talked about the problem with reintroducing old blood, having an animal showing up periodically in the same pedigree. You're basically just introducing old genes that should have been weeded out.
Right.
So you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
That was one thing I was going to talk about. Managing the COI.
I like 24 too.
What's that?
I like 24. Because
what's 24?
Performance traits and gameness are never improved in one mating or cross.
Yeah. A lot of people think they can improve performance, ability, gameness. Any polygenic traits are never fixed with one breeding or one cross or one infusion. Polygenic traits are cool that even when you see a fault, they can be fixed, but it takes many generations to improve them. And you'll see the improvements subtly over time, showing you that you are making it. You are doing it. You are bettering them. Okay. But no, anytime you add new blood, you recombinate the genes. Check out meiosis in the crossover event and see how the genes are shuffled and recombinate it, because what happens during meiosis is the chromosome from the mother and the chromosome of the father, there's a certain part, I think it's phase 2, they actually wrap around each other. Okay. So when they split off and separate from each other, they leave parts of each other on each other. That's where you get the variation. Because if they didn't do that and they just went into the next phase, then you would have some offspring that would represent the mother and some offspring that would represent the father. Well, what this does is they wrap around each other, leave parts of each other. That's how we get variation. That's why we see variation in the offspring. That's why my brothers and sisters look completely different than me, because of meiosis. So what's happening is you're shuffling the genes and then you're recombinating them. What it does is it creates brand new gametes, eggs and sperm, which creates variation in the offspring and unique, where the offspring are completely different. Now, if the closer the family is genetically, the more they're going to look like each other. But if you were to do a DNA test, they would still, even twins, like human twins, they're not as identical as you think. Okay. If you look at, well, no, they are identical, like paternal twins. They're not. No, let me do this a different way. Okay, like dogs. Let's not go there. I don't know that much about human genetics. I don't even know I went there. So if I look at dogs, they look identical. I look at a brother and a sister or two sisters. They could look identical, but if you were to do a DNA check, they wouldn't. They'd be more different. They would be a lot different than you think. Yeah.
Right.
So now, if you were to do a brother and sister mating, they are different still. A lot of genes are going to match up. So the offspring are going to help create the next generation that are going to be even more uniform, but they're still going to be different. They're not going to be identical either.
Gotcha. What is a bell-shaped curve?
Bell-shaped curve is what you see like in a like polygenics. So if I was to take the entirety of let's say my chickens, it'd be easier. So if I let all my chickens out in the yard and I was examining them, I was record which were the tall ones, which ones were the low ones, and then what was the medium in the middle. So you would see extremes on each side of the bell-shaped curve, low versus high. And then in the middle, there'd be variation of different sizes. And the highest percentage is the height of the bell-shaped curve. So what you'd see is the lowest, and then the measurement of all the different variations in the middle would show up as a bell-shaped curve and then go to the highest. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So depending on how high that bell-shaped curve is and where the bell-shaped curve shows up will determine how uniform, consistent your family is. So basically what you want is a bell-shaped curve where the extremes of what you're looking for is over here. The lowest are over here, but the bell shape is actually very low, and then it's a straight line all the way because all these are right where you want them. That's what you want to see. But if you have a huge curve and it's more towards where you want it, closer to the other extreme, then you have a lot of variation you have to deal with. Okay. So it's just a way of measuring the variation with your family and then determining the two extremes.
Gotcha. What is more likely to improve egg production? Inbreeding
in your dogs?
This is Jordan.
Okay, what is more likely to improve egg production in breeding or outcrossing?
Yeah.
Oh, inbreeding or outcrossing.
Yeah.
Well, over time, I mean, if you're looking to produce animals that produce really good eggs and you don't need to go forward with them, then outcrossing would be a good thing to do because you're only producing the birds to produce eggs, but you're not going to breed to them. But if you want to create a family that over time will produce better eggs, then you want to do a proper breeding program and select for that particular trait. And in time, they'll get better and better. So it's, what do you want to do? Do you want to create a family, or you just want some animals that are producing really good eggs for now? That's the difference.
Right. He asked a similar question about meat birds earlier, which is better, inbreed or outcross. But isn't meat birds is a cross?
Well, it depends. Like the breasts, that's actually a breed. So if you're actually creating a family from breasts that want better meat quality, then you would breed for better meat quality in that family, and over time they would get better and better. If you're just looking for animals that are terminal birds, and you just want to produce animals that you just want to process each year, you're not worried about breeding or making a family out of them, then you do a cross. A good cross for like a meat bird would be, well, the commercial industry, they have their own. They started out as a Cornish bred to a white Plymouth Rock. They're different now. They have their grandparent, great grandparent lines, grandparent lines, parent lines, and they're all very protected lines. But it's the parent lines that the hatcheries get, and then we get the product from that, and they're just terminal birds. Okay, but if we want to create our own, we want a family that's going to produce the meat for us that we can reproduce every year. Then we want to make a family from it, and then we want to select the animals with the best meat quality over time, and we'll get there. So it depends what you want,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Why don't we inbreed humans anymore? Are you sure about that? I live in Arkansas, Missouri. I might could show you a few inbred people.
Did I open a door that I shouldn't
have? Looking at the Master Breeders website, these practices can be applied to dogs as well. Yeah, he just coming in, so some of this stuff is
and the website is based on American game fowl, but we have domestic chicken breeders, we have livestock breeders of all kind in there, and we have dog breeders. Now, the process, the founders program that's in there right now can be used. We could also do a coaching call, and I can show you. Well, you can show me what you have, the quality of the animals you're starting with, show me where you're at, and we can decide whether we need to alter the program a little bit for you, because birds are different than mammals. And we are working on a program, the founders program, that is devoted to mammals. That will be coming soon. But if you join now, there's plenty of information in there for you to learn from. And so there's no short of information. Just know, though, that Sunday on Father's Day, midnight, we are closing the website for new members. And I don't know when we're going to move it. We usually open it a couple times a year, occasionally 3 times a year. Not sure when we'll open it again, but we usually get a good rush of members before we close. And I like that method. And then after a number of months, we may open it again and let more in, you know. So just know this Sunday is the when we're closing the website for a while.
Right. Martin says tons of defects. Kenny, if you don't remember, I did a show with Martin, the American Bulldog guy.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go back and look. That's him, though. Tons of defects start to pop out after 3-4 months in my family. And your family of chickens, because he does chickens and dogs.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does he want to know?
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's a member or going to be a member again, we can get together on a coaching call and we could talk about it.
Okay, cool.
Not sure what the question is.
Yeah.
I mean, defects when you're starting out, it's part of the deal. You know, it just is. There's ways. You just have to deal with it. You have to clean it up as you go, and then once you get into the foundation stage, it gets better and better. You know, but the cleanup process does. If you're doing the cleanup process, that does draw those defects out. That's a good sign. You want to. I don't get all freaked out. I just cull them and breed to the ones that are not expressing the defects.
Right. Right. Okay. Great dialogue here. Okay. Yeah, I don't see any more questions, but like we say, Kenny is going to be doing a series of videos and on this breeding a subject, because it's a hot topic. People want to know about it. And if you're in the dog world, it ain't many men that really just get into it, talk about it. I haven't seen nothing like it except on my show. I mean, I see it on other channels, but the digging in on it, we're going to start getting a little bit more detailed on it. So y'all look forward to it. And we're going to drop as many as we can, as fast as we can. I got a kind of afflicted work schedule, especially in the summer. So, but I'm going to have to probably make some sacrifice so we can do a little bit more. Yeah.
Well, I know you wanted to get into the actual methods, and I just thought if there was some things we probably should cover first.
Oh, yeah.
to, lay the path.
Yeah, you always say that too, because like in a breeder's academy, I know how to go in there and jump straight to some things I want to know, but it is best to start from the beginning. And because it's a lot of things getting organizing your program is very important. So I had a breeder reach out to me. He had some questions about something. I said, well, start here first. So you'll know, so you'll get it. A few days later, but man, appreciate it. Because that's what I said. Yeah, you can't jump right there. You need to get an understanding of what you're doing before you try to go over there. And then because it all needs to tie together and make sense. You know what I mean?
Well, like I told you, we're gonna shake it up. A lot of people, there's some people are gonna be they're gonna embrace it, learn from it, move forward. Some are gonna fight it, and I don't know, we get all types, but I wouldn't be surprised if we get different comments about it. You know what I mean? So
right. Can you walk us through making selections in the litter? You ain't gonna be able to do that though, Kenny. You know what I mean?
No, I'm not a dog breeder.
Right.
I just teach the breeding process,
the breeding method,
the genetics. Now, as we're going, Nancy and I are digging into like I said, we're creating programs and courses for dog breeders. We're altering the founders program, and I'm studying you guys. I'm checking out the YouTube channels, and so I'm learning a lot. And between what I'm learning from YouTube, from my members, and from the books we've been purchasing, I got a lot of Den Man books. I didn't even know they were available. This is awesome.
Yeah, I bought me some too. I need to see which ones you got.
Yeah, I'll show you. They're good too. They're actually good.
Yeah.
There's a couple.
I don't know why it's like this, Kenny, but those old books got more than the new books.
Well, the new books, and we have the same problem with chicken books, because we'll buy the books that are off the shelf, like in Tractor Supply. Right. When there's a new one, we'll actually buy it to check it out. Okay. They cover the basics of husbandry, okay, and healthcare. They barely go into genetics at all. They only cover dominant recessive. They totally miss polygenics. They might even cover a little bit of sex linked. They don't understand the similarities between evolutionary biology and selective breeding and why that's important. So they miss everything. And I don't know if they do it on purpose. They just feel like they have to cover it a little bit so that it's there, but they either miss it or don't know it, and they get it wrong. And I'm seeing that on YouTube too, where there's a lot of people are trying to teach breeding, but they don't really understand it fully. They have a general idea. It's like Frank says, my co-host, he says, learn it today, teach it tomorrow. And I'm seeing that where they're thinking it's all about dominant recessive. Well, no, it's not. Dominant recessive only plays a small role when you think about polygenics.
Right.
Okay. And understanding the defects that are monogenic, which is dominant recessive, versus polygenic, shows you how to actually improve those traits. The way you handle monogenic traits is completely different than the way you would handle polygenic traits. And if you understand that, you can improve your animals. You can improve your family. So that's really important. If you understand evolutionary biology and the mechanisms of evolution, you understand why we do certain things in a breeding program, why they're important and why they work the way they do. So that when I say we line breed, then you understand by following the mechanism of evolution, you understand why we line breed the way we do. Okay. Same thing with inbreeding. This happens in the wild too. Outcrossing, backcrossing, what others? Inbreeding, line breeding, all those all happen in the wild.
Naturally.
Okay. So it's all about understanding like genetic drift. That can be broken up into two different ways. You got bottlenecking is one way of genetic drift. You have the founders effect is why one of the reasons I called the founders program what I did, because of the founders effect. Completely different methods, but both are genetic drift. Then you have gene flow. And if you understand, gene flow has a lot to do with the idea of why you should or shouldn't backcross, depending on where you're at in the breeding program. But understanding that when you stop the flow of genes, that's when you actually create a family. So anytime you backcross, you're starting over. When you stop the flow of genes, that's when you get to work and actually create the family. Anytime you introduce new blood, you reintroduce the flow of genes, and you no longer have the family.
Right.
This happens in the wild too.
Right.
That's how new species are created.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's just the simple sides of the mechanisms of evolution.
And then, and since day one, Kenny, I think we always been in agreement that the methods of breeding, and even your best breeders would tell you, go across all animals. Kenny is not trying to tell you what to do breed specific for your dog. He's trying to teach you the science of breeding. Some of the stuff you can't get in the new books, like the books I got back over here. The stuff, it's some really good stuff. If you another thing, this is another thing. These kind of videos and things like this are good because a lot of you don't have time to get in those books and read them and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So, and once you get in the academy, it's compiled, it's organized, it's okay. It's step by step. Not no what's that 3 in 1 out shit. All that.
Yeah.
So I just want to let y'all know that Kenny's not like, okay, let me tell you how to breed the beagle. Let me tell you how to.
No,
it's the science of breeding across all animals.
yeah. Same thing with chickens. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to breed a particular type of domestic chicken that I don't breed, but I'm going to show you the breeding process. I'm going to show you the breeding program. Okay. The genetic factors of that particular breed and the selection points that you're going to, how do I say this? The genetic factors of that breed and what you select is going to be different depending on the breed. That's something you're going to have to learn on your own. Now,
breed standard and all that stuff, you got to do it on your own, guys.
Yeah. I'm going to give you the genetics of those traits, but you're going to have to learn the specifics of that particular breed. Same thing with dogs. We're going to put together a program that shows you all the defects. Okay. A lot of the genetic factors like coat color, things like that. But you're going to have to get to know your breed and look up what to select for, what to cull, that kind of thing. So I don't teach that.
Right. Gotcha. I think that's it all on the questions. Can somebody block Fraser Bulldog for coming in and talking about Roll Tide? No, I'm just kidding. that's a sports thing, Kenny.
Okay.
So I think, hey, man, I think it's at the we at that point,
Well, I know I talked fast. I was trying to cover it because I knew there was a big outline. I hope I didn't. I hope I made sense. I hope I didn't mumble my way through it. So
yeah, you did great. Yeah, so I think that's it, and then we'll try to come back with another one as soon as possible, and we just thank everybody for coming. And like Kenny said, the end of the getting into the Breeders' Academy is Sunday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Father's Day, midnight.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we call it quits. Thanks everybody for coming out.